Age of Darkness is the latest mini LP from Tombstalker, a Lexington, Kentucky-based death metal band who have strong influences from early Swedish melodic death metal and kind of classic Swedish death metal, alongside some of the natural associations with crust punk and extreme hardcore punk that naturally would have arisen in the early 90s at the same time. So this band has been around for a while, and definitely started out playing something similar to this sound and evolved it over time, depending on the lineup, depending on the situation with the recording. You got something close to maybe early desultory, intestinalisms, like early demos. And generally speaking, if you're a fan of Dismember and Bolt Thrower, you kind of got a little bit of both in their work, but not in such a typical HM2 grinding kind of way. So the element of metal punk or crust punk in their sound is very light, but it is certainly there the same way it is in early Bolt Thrower. And that means that you find, well, I found good enough reason to include them in my death metal slash crust punk retrospective a couple of years ago. And that's not necessarily what's interesting about this EP, although it is part of it. So we'll cut into a song and I'll show you kind of what the big deal is here. So these guys took kind of a little bit of a hiatus with this band as they found a new drummer and worked on their other band, a more recent collaboration as Rotting Kingdom, which is a kind of an old school death to metal project. And they pulled the lead guitarist out of that group and stuck him in with this one, and it's led to a much more effective and fully formed sense of their melodic death metal ambitions and a real potency of all the things that they had envisioned early on in the band and had basically achieved, as far back as 2011 with their self-titled EP. But now they're hitting upon something that is more just effective as in terms of just songwriting and cutting right to the points that they were intending to craft their sound with. Now, what that amounts to is something I would consider kind of the nearby or post Terminal Spirit Disease era melodic death metal enthusiasm, and maybe even a sound that is heavier than that I would, if you've heard Blood Red Massacre from Flesh Crawl, I think that's a really good place to start when you're describing melodic death metal that creeped into the sound of kind of more harder edged death metal bands. And we could pull back to Dismember with a lot of that, but in their hands it becomes anthemic, a little bit triumphal in the way they shape the melodies. There's a very slight blackened edge to a lot of their work, which just kind of creeps in here a little bit, while they also fit in a long acoustic guitar interlude, two very strong melodics, death metal songs, and a more straightforward kind of Bolt Thrower-esque piece. So this is what we're getting here is the best showing of Tombstalker, everything they're all about. It's sort of everything you'd want to hear before they started working on a full length in this style. And I hope that's where they're going with it, because this is all just good. It's great. This is one of my just more succinct, great examples of what United States death metal could be doing with their time rather than making mosh metal, is these very strong studies of just smart taste, very strong songwriting, and just finding the value of melodic death metal again in a more genuine sense. So I had a great time with this EP. There's not that much to go on about. I mean, for some people it'd be like, hey, I remember that band and they're even better than they ever were. And that's kind of my takeaway here, is that this is some of their finest work to date and some of their most representative work to date. So definitely worth checking out. It's a high recommendation for me, and you'll see it is included on my best of the month.